Welcome to the Sleepy Scribe. Your endless internet wandering has brought you here, and hopefully you can finally sleep to today's story, Jack and the Beanstalk. Now, before we begin, comment where you are listening from, and how late it is where you are. It is so very interesting to see how far and wide people come to listen. Lastly, if you enjoy these videos, please subscribe, it would be very appreciated. Now, let us begin. In a small thatched cottage that leaned ever so slightly to one side, as though it had been bowing politely to the wind for decades, there lived a boy named Jack and his widowed mother. The cottage was tucked at the far edge of a village where the cobblestone road grew tired and crumbled into a path of mud and grass, and beyond it stretched the rolling hills like giant green waves, their crests dotted with patches of wildflowers that swayed as though whispering secrets to the breeze. Jack was the sort of boy whose curiosity was both a blessing and a curse. His mind was always wandering into places where his feet had not yet dared to go, and his hands had a habit of fiddling with anything within reach, whether it was a loose nail on the doorframe, a curious beetle crossing the path, or the edge of a loaf of bread cooling on the windowsill. His mother loved him dearly, but she often sighed at his lack of sense. "Dreams don't fill empty bellies, Jack," she would say, as she kneaded dough with a rhythmic thump that matched the beat of her patience wearing thin. They were not wealthy, nor even comfortably poor. They had slipped into the kind of poverty that made every day a calculation, every meal a question. Their only real possession of value was a milk cow named Bess, a gentle creature with eyes the color of warm chestnuts and a slow, thoughtful way of chewing as if each bite of grass required careful philosophical consideration. Bess had been with them for as long as Jack could remember. Her milk had been their main source of nourishment, and the small coins they earned from selling it kept them afloat like a rickety raft on a restless sea. But one spring, the grass turned patchy, rain came too little, and Bess's milk trickled to almost nothing. Jack's mother grew quiet in those days, her hands working harder but her eyes growing dimmer, until one morning she told Jack with a heavy sigh that Bess must be sold at the market. Jack, though not thrilled at the idea of losing the old cow, puffed out his chest and assured her he would fetch the best price. "Don't let anyone cheat you," she warned, pointing a flour-dusted finger at him. "And don't dawdle. The sooner you return, the sooner we can have bread on the table." Jack grinned, a grin full of optimism that often arrived before his sense of caution, and set off with Bess's rope in hand. The road to the market was long enough to invite daydreams, and Jack's mind wandered with every step. The fields whispered with the rustle of mice in the grass, the air smelled faintly of honey from the hedgerow blossoms, and Bess plodded beside him, occasionally flicking her tail with an air of resigned dignity. Halfway to the market, as the path curved around a great oak tree with roots that rose like sleeping dragons from the earth, Jack encountered a man unlike any he had ever seen. He was neither young nor old, with a beard that looked as though it had been carved from frost and eyes that seemed to reflect the shifting colors of the sky. His cloak was a patchwork of many fabrics, silks and wools, velvets and linens, stitched together in a pattern that made no sense but was oddly pleasing to look at, as though the wind itself had chosen the pieces. "Good day to you, young traveler," the man said in a voice that carried a strange music, as if each word were balancing on the edge of a song. "And good day to you, sir," Jack replied, standing a little straighter, for something about the man demanded a certain respect. The man's eyes drifted to Bess, who had stopped to nibble on a stubborn tuft of grass. "Fine animal you have there," he remarked. "On your way to sell her?" Jack nodded. "At the market. We need the coin for food." The man tilted his head thoughtfully. "Coin? But coins are cold things, easily lost, easily spent. What if I offered you something warmer, something far more valuable than gold or silver?" Jack blinked. "And what would that be?" The man reached into his cloak and drew out his hand, in which lay 5 beans. They were small, yet each seemed to glow faintly, as if they held a drop of starlight inside. "Magic beans," the man said with a small smile. "Plant them, and wonders will follow." Jack, of course, had heard stories of magic beans before, told by children around the fire with all the wildness of rumor. But this man's tone was so certain, his gaze so steady, that a part of Jack wanted to believe. Still, another part, echoing his mother's warning, whispered that this could be folly. "What kind of wonders?" Jack asked, narrowing his eyes. The man chuckled softly. "The kind that change the course of your life forever. But I will not tell you more. Wonders are best discovered, not described. I offer these in trade for your cow." Jack hesitated, glancing at Bess, who looked back at him with an expression that could almost be read as, "Don't you dare." But the beans seemed to hum in the man's palm, and something in that sound stirred Jack's restless heart. Without fully deciding, and yet somehow already decided, Jack reached for the beans. The man's smile deepened, and he handed them over, taking Bess's rope in return. "Plant them tonight, and do not wait for the morning," he said. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, leading Bess along the path. Jack stood there for a moment, the weight of the beans in his hand far lighter than the weight of what he had just done. As he started back toward home, he imagined fields of towering flowers, rivers of gold, castles in the clouds. But when his mother saw the beans in his hand, her reaction was rather less enchanted. "Beans?" she cried, her voice rising in a tone Jack had learned to fear. "You traded our cow for beans." Jack tried to explain about the man and the promise of wonders, but his mother's fury was like a storm with no shelter. She snatched the beans from his hand and flung them out the open window, where they vanished into the dark soil of the garden. "Go to bed, Jack, and pray we don't starve." Jack lay awake that night, staring at the rafters, wondering whether he had made the biggest mistake of his life or the beginning of something extraordinary. He did not know that, outside, where the beans had fallen, the earth was already beginning to stir. Jack awoke the next morning to a strange hush, as if the world were holding its breath, waiting for him to notice something. For a moment, he thought it might have been the absence of his mother's usual clattering in the kitchen, but then he realized the light coming through the window was different, not the warm gold of dawn, but a softer, green-tinged glow that made the air feel almost enchanted. Pushing aside the threadbare blanket, he rushed to the window and stopped dead, his breath catching in his throat. Where the beans had landed in the garden, a single stalk had shot up overnight, not merely a sprout or sapling, but a colossal, twisting beanstalk that seemed to defy every law of nature. Its stem was as thick as the great oak at the village square, and it rose into the sky in a spiraling dance of vibrant green, its leaves as large as dinner plates and glistening with dew that shimmered like tiny prisms. The stalk stretched so high that Jack's neck ached from trying to see its top, which vanished into a bank of pearly clouds that drifted lazily above. The air around it was alive with the hum of unseen energy, and a faint, sweet fragrance drifted down from somewhere far above, like honey mixed with the scent of summer rain. His mother came up behind him, still tying her apron, and froze when she saw it. "Saints preserve us," she whispered, her voice trembling between awe and disbelief. "What in the name of—" But before she could finish, Jack was already pulling on his boots, his eyes alight with the reckless gleam of someone who had been handed a challenge too tempting to resist. "I'm going up," he announced. "Up," she sputtered. "Up where? That thing could lead to anywhere. It could be dangerous." Jack grinned, the same grin he'd worn when he first saw the beans. "Exactly." He grabbed a loaf of bread from the table, stuffed it into his satchel, and strode out the door before his mother could stop him. The beanstalk was even more magnificent up close, its surface smooth but with ridges and tendrils that formed perfect handholds, as if it had been designed for climbing. Jack took his first grip and hoisted himself up, the cool morning air rushing around him. Higher and higher he climbed, passing leaves that were alive with darting insects of colors he had never seen before, brilliant blues and shimmering golds that caught the light like jewels. Birds with feathers like flames flitted between the branches, their songs weaving strange and beautiful melodies that seemed to urge him onward. The ground fell away beneath him, the village shrinking until it looked like a child's toy, and still he climbed. Clouds drifted past, their mist cool against his skin, tasting faintly of fresh water and something sweeter, like spun sugar. The air grew thinner, yet strangely easier to breathe, as if it carried not just oxygen but a whisper of magic. At last, Jack's hand reached a thick, curling vine that arched over a flat, shimmering surface, and he pulled himself up and gasped. He stood at the edge of a vast land above the clouds, where the ground was covered in lush, emerald grass that swayed though no wind stirred. Flowers as tall as a man nodded lazily in the sunshine, their petals glowing faintly, and in the distance, Jack saw a castle unlike any on earth. Its towers were so high they seemed to pierce the heavens, each capped with a roof of gold that caught the sun and sent beams of light spilling across the land. The walls were carved from pale stone, so smooth they reflected the clouds like a mirror, and each gate was guarded by statues of creatures Jack could not name, half lion, half eagle, with wings spread wide. Yet even from here, Jack could see movement near the castle, a great shadow shifting, far too large to be any ordinary man. His curiosity ignited, he began walking toward it, the ground beneath him springy as though it were made for running. On his way, he passed streams of crystal-clear water that sang over beds of shimmering pebbles, and orchards heavy with fruit that glistened like polished gems, apples the size of pumpkins, cherries as big as plums. Jack plucked one golden apple and bit into it. The flavor burst across his tongue, sweeter than anything he had ever tasted, leaving a warm glow in his chest. He laughed aloud, the sound ringing strangely in this magical air. But as he drew nearer to the castle, the air seemed to grow heavier, charged with something ancient and dangerous. The gates towered above him, and beside them lay a footprint pressed into the earth, so large Jack could have curled up and slept in it. The hairs on the back of his neck prickled, but instead of turning back, he felt an odd thrill run through him. Whatever made that footprint was here, and Jack's instincts told him that this was where his wonders truly began. He slipped through a gap in the gate just wide enough for someone his size, finding himself in a courtyard paved with white stone that gleamed like moonlight. Far above, a deep rumble echoed, a sound too slow to be thunder, too deliberate to be anything but footsteps. Somewhere inside that castle, something immense was moving. Jack pressed himself against the cool stone of the courtyard wall, his heart thudding in his chest like a drum in a festival parade. The sound of those massive footsteps rolled through the air again, shaking the ground beneath his feet and sending little vibrations up his legs. Each step was deliberate, unhurried, and full of weight, as though whoever, whatever, was walking knew there was no creature alive who could challenge it. Above him, great banners hung from the towering castle walls, each embroidered with strange sigils of gold thread, swirling patterns that seemed almost to move when Jack's eyes lingered too long. They depicted scenes of colossal figures striding across landscapes dotted with tiny villages, of winged beasts chained to marble pillars, and of treasures piled higher than mountains. Jack's imagination, always quick to run wild, began weaving stories from the images, tales of ancient giants ruling over realms hidden from mortal eyes. The courtyard smelled faintly of warm bread and roasted meat, a scent that curled around him like a beckoning finger. His stomach growled loudly in betrayal, making him wince, but the castle door, an immense slab of carved wood banded with iron, stood slightly ajar, letting out a shaft of warm light. Curiosity won over caution. He slipped inside, moving silently across the polished floor, his footsteps muffled by a rug woven with intricate patterns that seemed to ripple as though stirred by an invisible breeze. The interior was vast beyond imagining, the ceiling lost in shadow and the walls lined with shelves stacked not with books but with objects. Goblets the size of cauldrons, necklaces that would take a dozen men to lift, coins so large and heavy they could crush a wheelbarrow. A fireplace big enough to hold Jack's entire cottage roared at the far end of the hall, the flames casting flickering light over a table that stretched longer than the main road of Jack's village. At the head of the table sat a man, or something shaped like a man, but magnified 100 times over. The giant was massive, with a beard like a thicket of brambles streaked with silver, and hair the color of storm clouds tumbling down over shoulders broad enough to carry a barn. His clothes were rough spun but rich in texture, dyed in deep reds and browns, and his boots looked as though they had been carved from single blocks of oak. Before him sat a roasted ox, turning slowly on a spit that could have doubled as a bridge beam. He tore at the meat with hands the size of wagon wheels, chewing thoughtfully as his eyes, grey and sharp as whetted steel, scanned the hall. "Fee," he rumbled, and the sound of that single syllable vibrated through Jack's bones like the strike of a great bell. "Fee, fear, fum." The words rolled from his lips like distant thunder, each one heavy with menace. Jack froze, the hair on his arms rising. The giant sniffed the air, his nostrils flaring. "I smell the blood of an Englishman," he growled, his voice low and dangerous. Jack ducked behind a golden pitcher taller than himself, pressing into the shadows, hardly daring to breathe. The giant rose to his feet, the ground trembling with the shift of his weight, and prowled toward the center of the hall, his heavy boots striking the stone like drumbeats. "Be he alive or be he dead," the giant muttered, "I'll grind his bones to make my bread." Jack's fingers gripped the edge of the pitcher so tightly that his knuckles ached, but his mind was racing faster than his fear. He had not climbed that beanstalk for nothing. He had come for adventure, and maybe, if luck favored him, something that could change his life and his mother's forever. The giant's gaze swept over the room once more, lingering for a heartbeat too long in Jack's direction. But then, as if convinced it had been only his imagination, he turned back to his table. Jack risked a quick glance around the room and spotted something glittering on a shelf not far from him. A harp, carved of pale wood and strung with golden strings that seemed to hum softly, as though whispering to themselves. Beside it sat a small hen, her feathers a deep, burnished gold, calmly preening under the watchful light of a nearby torch. Jack's heart leapt. He had heard old tales in his village about a golden hen that could lay eggs of pure gold, and a harp that could sing sweeter than any bard. If even one of those legends was true, it would mean the end of hunger and poverty for him and his mother. But to get them, he would have to cross the open hall, within arm's reach of the giant. He drew in a slow breath, trying to quiet the pounding in his ears. The moment had to be chosen carefully, like a fox waiting for the hound to turn its head. Then, from somewhere in the depths of the castle, a deep chime rang out, perhaps a bell marking the hour, and the giant turned away, lumbering toward a massive door at the far end of the hall. Jack seized his chance. He darted from his hiding place, his feet silent on the thick rug, and made for the shelf. The harp gave a soft, curious note as his hands touched it, almost as if greeting him. The hen cocked her head but did not move, her eyes bright and knowing. Jack cradled both treasures against his chest, marveling at their weight and warmth. But before he could take more than a step back toward the door, a voice like rolling thunder shook the air. "Who's there?" Jack's blood turned to ice at the sound, and for a heartbeat he could not move. The giant's shadow loomed against the far wall, stretching toward him like the grasp of some dark, living thing. Slowly, the huge figure turned, and Jack saw the eyes, those cold, grey, storm-tossed eyes, fixed directly on him. They were sharp as sword points now, narrowing in recognition. "Thief!" the giant roared, and the words seemed to slam against the walls, bouncing back in echoes that made the harp in Jack's arms shiver with a trembling chord. The hen gave a startled squawk, flapping its golden wings just once before settling again, her weight surprisingly heavy for such a small creature. Jack's legs finally obeyed him, and he spun on his heel, bolting for the doorway. His boots slid slightly on the polished floor, and behind him came the terrifying pounding of those enormous feet. It was like being chased by a collapsing building, each step of the giant sending vibrations up Jack's spine and rattling his teeth. The harp let out a plaintive, almost frightened melody, its strings resonating with each jolt as if urging him to run faster. "Stop, little worm," the giant bellowed, and his voice was so loud it rattled the suits of armor lining the hall, their empty visors seeming to watch Jack's desperate flight. Jack darted through the half-open door and into the courtyard, the golden hen's feathers brushing his chin and the harp clutched tight against his side. The cool night air hit his face, sharp with the smell of dew and distant rain, but he didn't dare slow down to savor it. Behind him, the massive door burst open with a crack of splintering wood, and the giant came barreling after him, his huge strides eating up the ground with terrifying speed. Jack's eyes darted to the beanstalk, its massive green coils swaying slightly in the wind, its leaves glinting faintly in the moonlight like polished jade. It seemed impossibly far away now, a rope to safety dangling from the very clouds, but the distance between him and the giant was shrinking with each second. His lungs burned, his legs screamed in protest, but the thought of those colossal hands wrapping around him drove him forward. The harp's song changed, now playing quick, urgent notes that matched the pounding of Jack's heart, as if it too understood the peril they were in. Jack reached the base of the beanstalk and without hesitation began to climb, his hands and feet moving in a frantic rhythm. The golden hen squawked again, feathers ruffling, and Jack had to tuck her securely under one arm while still gripping the thick vines with the other. The beanstalk swayed beneath him, the wind carrying the faint scent of clouds and something wild and green. From below came the roar of the giant, so loud that leaves trembled and vines quivered. Jack risked a glance down and wished he hadn't. The giant had reached the base and was already beginning to climb, his enormous fingers curling easily around the thick vines, pulling himself upward with terrifying ease. "You can't outrun me, boy," the giant thundered, his voice rolling through the night like distant cannon fire. Jack's breath came in ragged gasps, his arms aching, but he climbed faster, the muscles in his legs burning as though he had fire in his veins. The world below shrank rapidly, the castle courtyard becoming no more than a patchwork of stone and grass, the giant's face a grim, furious mask rising ever closer. The harp's strings seemed to blaze with sound now, its melody fierce and defiant, while the hen's golden feathers gleamed in the moonlight like a talisman against fear. Above him, the clouds parted slightly, revealing the silvery glow of the moon, which seemed to beckon him higher, whispering of freedom. Jack gritted his teeth and pushed on, the wind tugging at his hair and stinging his eyes. But as he climbed, he realized with a cold shock that the giant was gaining. The huge hands reached up, stretching toward his boots, the giant's breath hot and smelling faintly of roasted meat and smoke. Jack's mind raced. He could climb until dawn and still be caught if he didn't find another way. Then he remembered his axe. It was waiting at the base of the beanstalk in his own world, right where he had left it after his first climb. A wild, desperate idea took root. He would have to get there before the giant did, and he would have only seconds to act. With renewed determination, he climbed faster, the night around him blurring into streaks of green vine, silver moonlight, and shadow. The hen clucked softly now, as if sensing his plan, while the harp played a steady, driving rhythm like the beat of a war drum. Below, the giant let out a frustrated roar that rattled the very beanstalk, but Jack did not slow. The cool air grew warmer as he neared the cloud's edge, and then, in a rush, he was through, sliding down into the world he knew. The village field stretched out before him, silent and bathed in moonlight, the grass shimmering with dew. His cottage stood in the distance, small and safe-looking, but Jack had no time to think of home. He jumped the last few feet to the ground, landing hard but steady, and sprinted for the axe leaning against a nearby stump. Behind him, the beanstalk shook violently, the giant's massive form descending like a thundercloud made flesh. Jack's fingers closed around the axe handle, its worn wood fitting perfectly into his grip. The harp's music swelled, and the hen gave a loud, urgent cry. The ground trembled. The giant's boots were already visible through the leaves above. Jack lifted the axe. With a deep breath that filled his chest like a bellows, Jack swung the axe with every ounce of strength he had. The blade bit into the beanstalk with a thick, meaty crack, sending a shudder up the green tower that rattled its leaves like wind in a forest. The vine was thicker than a man's torso, slick with dew, and its sap oozed where the axe struck, smelling faintly of fresh-cut grass and some strange sweetness, almost like honey. Jack yanked the blade free and swung again, his muscles screaming in protest, his hands raw from the rough handle, but he didn't stop. Above him, the giant's furious voice shook the night. "You dare!" he bellowed, and Jack could feel the vibrations in his ribs. Through the thick foliage, he caught flashes of the giant's enormous hands clawing downward, each finger as long as Jack's arm, reaching for him. The harp strings sang out a fast, frantic tune now, notes spilling into the air like sparks from a fire. The hen clucked wildly in Jack's arm, its golden feathers catching the moonlight in blinding flashes, as if trying to scare off the danger with brilliance alone. Another swing, another sharp crack, and the beanstalk groaned deeply, as though it were a living creature pleading not to fall. Leaves shook loose and spiraled toward the earth, their shadows dancing over Jack's face. He risked a glance upward and saw the giant's face breaking through the leaves, huge, twisted with rage, and close enough now that Jack could see the deep creases in his weathered skin, the crooked yellow teeth grinding together, and the wild glint in those stormy eyes. "I'll grind your bones," the giant roared, his voice a hammer blow in the night. Jack's heart hammered back, faster, harder, and with a final roar of his own, he swung again. The axe buried itself deep, and the beanstalk shivered like it had been struck by lightning. Sap sprayed, slicking his hands, but he pulled the axe free and struck once more, the force of it ringing up his arms. There was a loud, splintering crack, deeper and louder than before, and the vine lurched under the giant's massive weight. The beanstalk tilted suddenly, a slow, groaning lean that made Jack's stomach twist. Leaves flew like startled birds, and the air filled with the sound of tearing fibers. The giant's hands clawed at the vines, trying to steady himself, but his size made him clumsy. The entire stalk swayed like a ship in a storm, and then, with a final, thunderous snap, it gave way. The giant's roar turned into a howl of shock as he fell, arms flailing, his body plummeting through the night like a falling boulder. He crashed into the earth with an impact that sent a tremor racing through the ground, toppling fence posts and rattling the shutters on Jack's cottage. Dust and dirt exploded into the air, briefly hiding the massive, motionless form from sight. Jack stood there, panting, the axe still in his hands, his arms shaking so violently he could barely keep his grip. The harp's music shifted into something soft and triumphant, like a quiet cheer after a long battle, and the golden hen tucked her head beneath her wing as if the world had suddenly grown peaceful again. Slowly, the dust settled, revealing the giant sprawled across the field, his great limbs slack, his head turned to one side. He looked almost like a mountain that had finally crumbled, his once fearsome form nothing more than a heap of stone and shadow in the moonlight. The beanstalk lay in pieces around him, its green coils already wilting, leaves curling as if mourning their fall from the clouds. Jack's chest heaved with each breath, his body aching, but a strange stillness filled the night now. He looked at the harp, its carved face serene, the strings glowing faintly as if lit from within. The golden hen opened one eye and gave him a curious, approving glance. He could almost swear they both understood what had just happened, that the long chase, the towering danger, had ended here in this quiet field. Yet, deep inside, Jack felt something else stir. He knew this was not just the end of a climb, but the beginning of a different kind of life. Riches could buy comfort, yes, but they could also invite envy, greed, and trouble. And somewhere far above, in that strange kingdom beyond the clouds, there was now an empty castle filled with treasures, guarded only by silence. He wondered, for just a moment, if he would ever see it again, or if, perhaps, one day another curious soul might plant a seed and find themselves on a journey not unlike his own. But for now, Jack turned toward home, his prize tucked under his arms, the harp's gentle tune leading him forward like a lullaby. The moon hung low over the fields, and the scent of crushed leaves and fresh sap lingered in the air. In the distance, the first faint light of dawn touched the horizon, promising a new day that would carry his story into the whispers and songs of the village for years to come. The morning light spilled over the horizon like warm honey, casting a golden glow across the rolling fields where Jack's cottage stood quietly amidst the dew-kissed grass. The air was alive with the soft chirping of birds waking from their slumber, their melodies weaving through the gentle rustle of leaves stirred by a breeze that carried the scent of fresh earth and blooming wildflowers. Jack's breath still came in slow, steady waves as he walked toward his humble home, the harp tucked carefully under one arm and the golden hen nestled safely beneath the other. His heart was full, not just with the treasures he had won, but with the memories of a night that had changed everything. The village was just beginning to stir, smoke curled from chimneys, and the faint clatter of wooden carts and morning chatter drifted through the air like threads in a tapestry. Children scampered along dirt paths, their laughter bubbling up like a clear stream, while neighbors exchanged nods and greetings, the rhythm of simple lives unfolding in the dawn's soft embrace. As Jack approached, his mother came out onto the porch, her eyes wide with a mixture of worry and relief. "Jack, where have you been all night?" she called, her voice trembling like a fragile leaf. He smiled, the weight of his adventure lifting slightly in the warmth of her gaze. "Mother, I've brought home gifts that will change our lives," he said, his voice steady but filled with wonder. "The harp sings like the wind, and the hen lays golden eggs." Her hands trembled as she reached out to touch the feathers, marveling at the radiant glow that seemed to pulse softly beneath her fingers. The village soon gathered around, drawn by tales of Jack's climb to the sky and the giant who had fallen like a mountain toppled by thunder. Old men rubbed their beards thoughtfully, imagining the towering castle beyond the clouds, while the children hung on every word, eyes wide with dreams of adventure and magic. Jack's father, a man weathered by years of hard work but softened by pride, clapped him on the shoulder. "You've done more than bring back treasures, son. You've brought hope." Days passed in a blur of new beginnings. The golden hen's eggs brought prosperity, easing the family's worries, and the harp's melodies filled the cottage with music that soothed even the weariest souls. But Jack knew that life was never quite as simple as stories made it seem. The riches brought attention, some of it welcome, some less so, and Jack felt the stirrings of something else, the restless call of the unknown, the promise of more beyond the fields he had always known. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in hues of amber and rose, Jack sat by the fire, the harp resting gently on his lap. The hen pecked softly at some crumbs nearby, her golden feathers catching the flickering light like embers. His mother's words echoed in his mind, "You've brought hope." But Jack knew the world was vast and full of shadows as well as light. He wondered what other mysteries waited beyond the next horizon, what tales had yet to be told, what giants still lingered in hidden places. Outside, the stars began to twinkle, shy and steady, as if watching over the boy who had dared to climb beyond the clouds. And in the quiet, beneath the vast sky, Jack felt a spark kindle, a flame of courage and curiosity that would carry him forward, wherever the road might lead. The village settled into a gentle rhythm under the soft glow of twilight, the sky painted with streaks of lavender and gold that melted slowly into the deepening indigo of night. Lanterns flickered to life in windows and doorways, casting pools of warm light that danced like fireflies against the cool shadows. Jack sat on the porch steps, the golden hen nestled comfortably beside him, while the harp rested silently at his feet. His eyes traced the familiar outlines of the hills and fields, yet his thoughts wandered far beyond, back to the towering Beanstalk, the giant's castle in the clouds, and the vast world that stretched out like an uncharted map waiting to be explored. Though his feet were firmly planted on the soft earth of home, his spirit hummed with a restless energy, a yearning for adventure that pulsed like the steady beat of a distant drum. The village elders often told stories of heroes and giants, of magic hidden in plain sight, but Jack knew from experience that there was truth woven through every tale, truth that whispered on the wind, that shimmered in the leaves, and that called to those brave enough to listen. The golden hen, now settled and content, occasionally let out a soft cluck, her feathers catching the lantern light and gleaming like molten gold. She had become more than a symbol of fortune. She was a reminder that even the smallest among us could hold the greatest treasures within. The harp, silent now, had sung songs that stirred the heart and banished fear, its melodies a thread connecting Jack to the world beyond the clouds. A cool breeze rustled the leaves overhead, carrying with it the scent of pine and distant rain. Jack breathed it in deeply, feeling the night enfold him like a comforting cloak. He knew that his story was far from over, that the beanstalk's broken remnants might yet sprout new shoots, and that the giant's realm held secrets still undiscovered. Somewhere out there, perhaps beyond the next hill or hidden in the folds of the sky, awaited new challenges and wonders. As stars blinked awake in the velvet sky, Jack's gaze lifted to the heavens, where the moon sailed like a silent guardian among the constellations. The world was vast and filled with mysteries, but Jack felt ready to face whatever lay ahead with courage, heart, and the magic of his own small but mighty spirit. In that quiet moment, beneath the endless expanse of night, the boy who had climbed a beanstalk into the sky dreamed not of riches or glory, but of the endless journey of discovery that awaited him, and of the stories he would one day tell. The first light of dawn crept slowly across the horizon, painting the sky in delicate shades of pink and gold, and as the village began to stir from its slumber, Jack found himself awake before the sun, the gentle warmth of the morning wrapping around him like a soft blanket. The golden hen perched quietly on the windowsill, its feathers catching the early light and shimmering like spun gold, while the harp leaned against the wooden frame, silent but still radiant with a faint glow that seemed to pulse softly, as if breathing in the new day's promise. Outside, the world was fresh and alive, dew clinging to blades of grass like countless tiny jewels, the air fragrant with the scent of wildflowers and damp earth, mingled with the distant call of morning birds greeting the day. Jack's heart swelled with a mixture of anticipation and calm, for the night's adventures had left him changed in ways he could not yet fully understand. Though the riches he carried promised comfort and security, it was the journey itself, the climb beyond the clouds, the encounter with the giant, the magic woven into every moment, that had awakened a deeper yearning within him. The village was slowly coming alive, with neighbors tending to their chores, the rhythmic sound of water from the well, the clatter of pots and pans, and the murmur of voices greeting the morning. Children tumbled across the fields, their laughter ringing out like bells, chasing after chickens and each other, while elders gathered near the hearths, sharing stories and memories as they had done for generations. Jack stepped outside, the wooden porch creaking softly beneath his feet, and felt the solid earth beneath him, the reassuring weight of home, and yet his eyes kept drifting upward, to where the broken beanstalk's remnants still clung to the earth like fading dreams. He wondered if, beneath the soil, new life stirred, reaching once more toward the sky, daring to grow beyond the bounds of the ordinary. The golden hen clucked softly, drawing his attention, and he smiled, her presence a reminder of the magic and mystery still intertwined with his everyday world. The harp, resting quietly nearby, seemed to hum with quiet anticipation, its strings waiting to sing again, ready to accompany him on whatever new paths awaited. Jack's mother stepped out to greet him, her eyes bright with pride and hope. "You've brought more than treasures back from the clouds, my son," she said softly. "You've brought us all a glimpse of something beyond the life we've known." Jack nodded, feeling the weight and warmth of her words settle deep within his chest. The path ahead was uncertain, but filled with possibility, and he knew that the greatest adventures were not just those that reached to the skies, but those that grew quietly in the heart. As the sun rose higher, casting long shadows and bathing the village in golden light, Jack took a deep breath, the fresh morning air filling him with strength and resolve. He glanced once more at the broken stalk, at the treasures that had changed his life, and then turned toward the fields, the forests, the wide-open world beyond. The story of Jack and the Beanstalk was not merely one of magic and giants, but of courage, hope, and the unending quest to climb higher, to dream bigger, and to find the extraordinary within the ordinary. With a heart full of wonder and a spirit ready to soar, Jack stepped forward, the golden hen by his side, the harp's silent song guiding him onward into the bright, unfolding day. The day unfurled like a vast tapestry woven with threads of sunlight and shadow, the gentle hum of life awakening across the village blending with the whisper of leaves and the distant chatter of the morning market. Jack moved with a steady purpose, his steps light but deliberate, carrying the golden hen and the harp nestled safely in a woven satchel slung over his shoulder. Each breath he took was filled with the scent of freshly turned soil and blooming wildflowers, the air vibrating with the soft buzz of bees and the distant song of a lark soaring high above the fields like a living note against the endless blue. The village was alive with activity. Merchants arranged their stalls with vibrant fruits and handcrafted goods, while children darted between legs and carts, their laughter weaving through the morning bustle like a joyful melody. Neighbors exchanged greetings and stories, their faces warm with the glow of shared lives and simple joys. Jack paused at the edge of the market square, his gaze drifting upward to the faint outline of the broken beanstalk's remnants that still clung to the earth near the forest's edge. Though its mighty form had been felled, the memory of its towering height lingered in the way the wind seemed to carry a whisper of its magic, rustling the leaves with a secretive sigh. As he continued on, Jack's thoughts turned inward, reflecting on the lessons woven through his journey, the courage that had carried him up the beanstalk's dizzying heights, the quick wit that had kept him one step ahead of the giant's grasp, and the kindness that had sparked friendships in the most unlikely places. The golden hen, now settled quietly in his satchel, felt like a living emblem of fortune and possibility, while the harp's silent strings held the promise of music yet to be played, songs that might one day soothe weary hearts or summon hope in the darkest moments. The path led Jack beyond the village and into the embrace of the forest, where ancient trees stood like silent sentinels, their branches weaving a canopy of dappled light that danced on the mossy floor beneath. The air here was cooler, tinged with the earthy scent of pine needles and rich soil, alive with the subtle movements of hidden creatures, the flicker of a squirrel's tail, the glint of a bird's wing, the soft rustle of leaves stirred by a curious breeze. Jack's steps were careful but eager, each footfall a small drumbeat in the quiet symphony of the woods. The forest felt like a world apart, a realm where magic seeped into every root and stone, where shadows held stories waiting to be discovered, and where the heartbeat of the earth pulsed steady and strong beneath the fallen leaves. As he ventured deeper, the canopy thickened, filtering the sunlight into golden shafts that illuminated patches of wildflowers and clusters of glowing mushrooms that seemed to pulse softly with an inner light. The harp's faint hum seemed to mingle with the forest's breath, a gentle reminder that music was a bridge between worlds, carrying stories across time and space. Suddenly, a rustling sound caught Jack's attention, and from behind a gnarled oak emerged a small figure, a forest sprite with eyes like glistening dewdrops and hair that shimmered like spun silver. The sprite's smile was both mischievous and kind, her voice a tinkling melody as she spoke. "Traveler of the beanstalk, bearer of golden gifts, what tales do you bring from the kingdom above?" Jack smiled in return, his heart lifting at the unexpected meeting. "I have journeyed far and faced great dangers," he replied, "but it is the wonder of the world, the magic, the music, the friends I have found, that I cherish most." The sprite's laughter rang out like bells, filling the clearing with light and warmth. "Then your path is one of true courage and joy. Come, let me show you the hidden places where the forest's secrets dwell, where the ordinary turns extraordinary, and where every step is a new story waiting to unfold." With a nod and a renewed sense of wonder, Jack followed the sprite deeper into the forest, the golden hen nestled safely and the harp's silent promise guiding him onward into a world where adventure and magic intertwined beneath the ever-watchful sky. The forest deepened around Jack and the sprite, the canopy above weaving a tapestry of emerald light that shimmered like liquid gold filtering through ancient leaves. Every step they took was softened by a carpet of moss so thick it seemed to breathe beneath their feet, alive with the whispers of 1,000 secrets long held by the trees. The air was fragrant with the musky scent of damp earth and blooming wild herbs, mingled with the faint sweetness of honeysuckle that clung to the winding vines creeping along twisted trunks. Birds flitted through the branches in bursts of color, scarlet, sapphire, and emerald, each one a tiny jewel darting in the light, their songs a chorus weaving around Jack like a gentle spell. The sprite's laughter bubbled through the dappled shade like a clear mountain brook as she led him along a hidden path lined with delicate flowers whose petals seemed to glow faintly in hues of violet and silver. "Few have walked this way," she murmured, her voice as soft as a breeze through the leaves, "for these woods guard their mysteries well. But you, Jack, have the heart to see beyond what others perceive." Jack's gaze wandered to the forest floor, where tiny creatures scurried in the underbrush, shining beetles whose shells gleamed like polished onyx, nimble rabbits with noses twitching in the cool air, and a family of hedgehogs rustling gently through fallen leaves like soft, rolling mounds of velvet and quills. The trees themselves seemed to lean in closer, their branches whispering ancient tales carried on the wind, as if eager to share their wisdom with this small boy who had touched the sky and returned unbroken. They reached a clearing bathed in a soft, otherworldly light that seemed to emanate from the very earth itself, where the grass shimmered like spun silver and a crystal-clear stream wound through the glade, its waters singing sweetly over smooth stones like a lullaby sung by the earth. Here, the sprite paused and knelt beside a cluster of tiny, luminescent flowers. "These are the stars' tears," she explained, gently brushing a petal with her finger. "They bloom only in places touched by magic and hope. Their glow will guide you through the darkest paths." Jack reached out to touch a flower, feeling a warmth spread through his fingers like the first rays of dawn. His heart beat steady and sure, filled with a quiet courage that felt as boundless as the sky he had once climbed toward. The sprite's eyes twinkled mischievously as she beckoned him forward. "But beware, for the forest holds both friend and foe. Not all who dwell here mean well. Your wit and kindness will be your greatest shields." As if to prove her words, a shadow flickered among the trees, a large, dark shape with eyes gleaming like polished amber. A fox stepped into the clearing, its fur shining like burnished copper in the shimmering light, its gaze sharp yet curious. The sprite smiled knowingly. "This is Bramble, a guardian of the woods. Trust him, for he will guide you where your feet alone cannot tread." Jack knelt and extended a hand, which Bramble sniffed before nudging gently, as if offering friendship and alliance. With the fox at his side, Jack felt the forest's magic pulse stronger, a living rhythm that seemed to hum in tune with his own heartbeat. Together, they would walk deeper into the mysteries that stretched beyond the beanstalk's shadow, exploring realms where courage, hope, and wonder entwined beneath the ever-changing sky. The path ahead wound deeper into the heart of the forest, where light and shadow danced in an endless play of mystery. Jack walked alongside Bramble, the fox's sleek fur brushing softly against the undergrowth, its sharp eyes alert to every movement and sound. The forest seemed to breathe around them, alive with the quiet rustling of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, and the faint murmur of a hidden brook weaving its way through moss-covered stones. Above, the towering trees stretched toward the heavens like ancient sentinels, their branches interlaced to form a cathedral of green and gold, filtering sunlight into shimmering patterns that dappled the forest floor with liquid light. Jack's heart beat steady with a mixture of excitement and caution, every sense alive to the enchantment and the unknown that waited beyond each bend. The golden hen nestled safely in his satchel, a warm and comforting presence, while the harp's silent promise seemed to hum softly, an unspoken melody weaving through the very air. As they ventured deeper, the underbrush grew thick and tangled, the scent of pine mingling with earth and wildflowers. Suddenly, the path opened into a glade where a circle of ancient stones stood weathered by time, their surfaces etched with runes that glowed faintly in the fading light. The air here thrummed with a powerful magic, a pulse that seemed to echo in Jack's bones. Bramble padded forward, nose low, and let out a soft, almost reverent whine. The forest's whispering shadows seemed to stretch endlessly as Jack, Bramble, and the sprite ventured beyond the circle of echoes, where the trees grew even taller and the air thickened with the scent of ancient magic and forgotten tales. The ground beneath their feet was a tapestry of roots and soft moss, dotted with clusters of glowing fungi that cast an otherworldly light, painting their path in gentle blues and greens that shimmered like stars fallen from the night sky. Jack's heart thrummed in rhythm with the forest's pulse, every sound and sent a note in the symphony of this enchanted realm. The golden hen rested quietly in his satchel, its feathers catching the faint glow of the bioluminescent plants, while the harp seemed to hum softly, as if eager to awaken from its silence and sing once more. As they pressed onward, the sprite's voice wove tales of the forest's ancient guardians, creatures both noble and fierce, whose watchful eyes had seen the rise and fall of kingdoms, and whose wisdom was etched into the very bark of the oldest trees. "Beware the shadow weaver," she warned softly, her eyes narrowing as they flickered with a hint of fear and respect. A creature born of darkness and forgotten sorrows, it lurks in the deepest shadows, weaving webs of illusion and despair. Only those with pure hearts and steady minds can hope to see through its deceits. Jack's grip tightened on the satchel as the weight of her words settled around him like a cloak. He glanced at Bramble, whose amber eyes gleamed with a fierce intelligence, and then at the sprite, whose presence was a beacon of light in the gathering dusk. Suddenly, a chill wind swept through the trees, carrying with it a whisper that sent shivers down Jack's spine, a soft, sibilant voice that seemed to echo from nowhere and everywhere at once. The forest grew still, the creatures silenced as if holding their breath in fearful anticipation. From the shadows emerged a figure woven from mist and shadow, its form shifting and flickering like a flame caught in the wind. The shadow weaver's eyes glowed like cold embers, and its voice slithered through the air like silk and poison. "Who dares trespass in my domain?" it hissed, the words curling around Jack like tendrils of smoke. Jack squared his shoulders, heart pounding but spirit unyielding. "I am Jack, and I seek not to harm but to understand," he replied, voice steady despite the tremor beneath. "I carry hope and courage, gifts from the world above and the forest below." The shadow weaver circled him slowly, its form flickering between shadow and light, testing, probing. "Hope and courage," it whispered, "rare treasures in a world steeped in darkness. But even the brightest flame can be snuffed out." Jack's eyes gleamed with determination. "Then let my flame burn brighter still. I will not be afraid." With those words, the golden hen in his satchel stirred, its feathers shimmering with radiant light that pushed back the encroaching shadows. The harp strings began to vibrate, though no hand touched them, releasing a melody both haunting and uplifting, a song of light piercing the darkness. The shadow weaver recoiled, its form unraveling like mist caught in the morning sun, before vanishing into the depths of the forest with a final hiss that faded into silence. Jack exhaled slowly, the tension easing from his body as the forest seemed to breathe again, the shadows retreating into their hidden places. Bramble nuzzled his side, a silent pledge of loyalty and protection, while the sprite's smile returned, warm and bright as dawn breaking over the hills. "You have faced the darkness with a brave heart," she said softly, "and the forest honors you for it. Many trials lie ahead, but with courage, kindness, and the magic you carry, no shadow can hold you." Together, they pressed forward, the path winding deeper into the enchanted woods where secrets and wonders awaited, each step a new thread in the unfolding story of a boy who dared to climb beyond the clouds and into the very heart of magic itself. The deeper Jack ventured into the enchanted forest, the more the world around him seemed to pulse with life and mystery, as if every leaf, stone, and whispering breeze carried its own story waiting to be discovered. The canopy above thickened, weaving a cathedral of emerald and gold, where shafts of sunlight pierced through like liquid fire, illuminating patches of vibrant moss and clusters of wildflowers that nodded gently in the warm air. Bramble trotted ahead with a confident grace, his keen senses alert to every movement in the underbrush, while the sprite floated nearby, her laughter like tinkling bells blending seamlessly with the chorus of birdsong and rustling leaves. Jack's steps were careful but eager, his heart swelling with a mixture of awe and determination. The golden hen nestled securely in his satchel, its feathers shimmering faintly, and the harp, though silent, seemed to hum with anticipation, as if ready to awaken and sing the stories yet untold. As they journeyed, the sprite began to weave tales of the forest's ancient history, recounting legends of heroes and magic, of battles fought beneath moonlit skies and friendships forged between the creatures of earth, air, and spirit. Her voice was soft and melodic, painting vivid pictures that danced through the mind like shadows cast by flickering candlelight. Suddenly, the path opened into a sun-dappled glade where a grand oak stood proudly, its wide trunk adorned with intricate carvings that glowed faintly with an ethereal light. The sprite paused, her eyes shining with reverence. "This is the heartwood tree," she whispered. "It is the soul of the forest, keeper of its wisdom and guardian of its secrets. Many come seeking its counsel, but only those pure of heart may draw near." Jack approached the tree slowly, feeling the ancient power thrumming beneath its bark like the steady beat of a great drum. Placing a hand upon its surface, he felt warmth spread through his fingers, a gentle pulse that seemed to reach into the very core of his being. The carvings shimmered, revealing images of the beanstalk reaching toward the clouds, of giants with thunderous steps, and of a boy small in stature but mighty in spirit. A soft breeze stirred the leaves overhead, carrying with it a melody so faint it seemed woven from the sighs of the wind itself. Jack closed his eyes, letting the music wash over him, feeling the harp's silent song awaken deep within his soul. The forest seemed to lean closer, the creatures around him hushed in reverence, as if bearing witness to a moment both ancient and new. The sprite's voice broke the silence, gentle and wise. Your journey has brought you far, Jack, and the forest has accepted you as one of its own. But there is more to learn, more to see, and more to become. The path ahead is winding, filled with wonders and challenges, but remember, the greatest magic lies within you. With renewed resolve, Jack stepped back from the heartwood tree, feeling its blessing like a warm cloak around his shoulders. Bramble nudged his hand with a reassuring nuzzle, and the sprite's laughter lifted like a bright song on the breeze. Together, they turned from the glade, the forest opening before them like a living storybook, ready to reveal the next chapter of adventure, friendship, and the enduring power of hope. The path beyond the heartwood tree twisted deeper into the forest's embrace, winding like a river of roots and shadows beneath the towering canopy that seemed to pulse with ancient life. Jack's small feet moved steadily, each step a heartbeat echoing the rhythm of the woodland around him, while Bramble trotted confidently, his amber eyes scanning the underbrush for any sign of movement or surprise. The sprite flitted nearby, her silver hair catching shards of sunlight that danced like liquid stars, her laughter a soft melody weaving through the rustling leaves and birdsong. As the forest thickened, the air grew cooler and heavier with the scent of pine and damp earth, mingled with the faint sweetness of wild berries ripening just beyond reach. Jack's gaze wandered to the golden hen nestled in his satchel, its feathers shimmering with a faint, almost otherworldly glow, and the harp resting against his side, silent but pulsing with unseen energy, as if it held its breath in anticipation of the moments yet to come. Suddenly, the trees parted to reveal a clearing unlike any Jack had seen, a place where the sunlight pooled like molten gold and the grass shimmered with dew that sparkled like scattered diamonds. In the center stood a majestic stag, its antlers sprawling like the branches of the ancient trees themselves, each tine glowing softly with a silver light that seemed to hum with power. The stag's eyes held a serene wisdom, deep and knowing, as it regarded Jack with a calm intensity that both humbled and inspired. The sprite's voice softened to a reverent whisper. "This is Eldrin, the Forest King, guardian of balance and keeper of the wild's ancient laws. Many seek his counsel, but few are granted an audience." Jack stepped forward cautiously, feeling the weight of the moment settle around him like a sacred veil. The stag lowered its head in greeting, a deep, resonant sound vibrating through the clearing like the tolling of a great bell. "Welcome, Jack," Eldrin spoke, his voice a rich tapestry of earth and wind. "You have journeyed far, and your heart carries both courage and kindness. The forest has watched your steps and recognizes the light you bring." Jack's pulse quickened with a mix of awe and determination. "Thank you, Eldrin. I seek to understand the magic of this world, to protect the hope I carry and to face whatever challenges lie ahead." The stag's gaze softened, and with a gentle nod, he extended a foreleg, revealing a small pouch woven from leaves and vines, pulsing faintly with a green glow. "Take this, the seed of renewal. Plant it where the darkness threatens to grow, and life will bloom anew. But remember, true strength lies not in power alone, but in the bonds you forge and the kindness you show." Jack accepted the gift with trembling hands, feeling its warmth seep into his skin, a promise of growth and resilience. Bramble circled the clearing, his tail flicking once in silent approval, while the sprite's eyes sparkled with a mixture of pride and encouragement. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the forest floor, Jack felt the weight of his journey deepen, yet also a newfound hope kindling bright within his chest. The path ahead was still uncertain, woven with mystery and danger, but also with magic and friendship. With Eldrin's blessing, the enchanted forest seemed to pulse around him, alive with possibility, and Jack stepped forward into the unfolding story that awaited beyond the twilight veil. The twilight deepened as Jack stepped away from Eldrin's sacred clearing, the seed of renewal warm in his palm like a heartbeat pulsing with promise. The forest around him shifted subtly, the gentle rustle of leaves turning into the soft hum of nocturnal life awakening, the shadows thickening into velvet drapes that swayed gently in the cool night breeze. Above, the stars began to blink open one by one, twinkling like scattered diamonds set against the deep indigo of the sky. Jack moved carefully, the path now softened by layers of fallen leaves that muffled his footsteps, his senses alert to every whisper and shimmer in the darkness. Bramble's keen eyes glowed faintly as he prowled ahead, a silent guardian whose presence was a comfort in the unknown. The sprite hovered close, her silver hair a shimmering veil that caught the moonlight like strands of spun glass, her voice a soft murmur carrying tales of night creatures and hidden wonders. "Beware the midnight glade," she cautioned gently. "It is a place where dreams and shadows entwine, where illusions can trap even the bravest heart. But if your spirit is true, and your courage steady, you may find the answers you seek." Jack nodded, clutching the pouch tightly, feeling the weight of his quest settle into a steady flame within him. As he pressed onward, the forest around him seemed to grow both more magical and more mysterious. Strange lights flickered among the trees, will-o'-the-wisps dancing like playful spirits teasing him forward, their glow flickering in hues of soft blues and greens. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and moss, layered with the faint metallic tang of hidden minerals in the soil. Suddenly, a gentle melody floated on the breeze, a haunting, lilting tune that seemed to rise from the very earth itself. Jack paused, his breath catching as the music wrapped around him like a silken thread, pulling at memories and dreams just beyond reach. The harp in his satchel twitched as if stirred by the unseen song, its strings humming softly in resonance. Drawn by the music, Jack followed the path to a clearing bathed in silver moonlight, where a crystal-clear pool mirrored the stars above. The water shimmered with an ethereal glow, and beside it sat a figure cloaked in moonbeams, a maiden whose eyes sparkled like the night sky, her hair cascading in waves of silver light. She smiled warmly as Jack approached, her voice a gentle song. "Welcome, traveler of courage and heart. I am Lyra, the keeper of night's secrets. Many have sought the truths hidden here, but few have the strength to see beyond the veil." Jack's heart quickened as he stepped closer, feeling the pulse of ancient magic thrumming beneath the surface of the pool. "I seek to understand, to protect, and to bring hope where darkness threatens," he said, voice steady though tinged with awe. Lyra nodded, her eyes reflecting the constellations above. "Then look deeply into the waters, and see not just what is, but what could be. For the future is woven from the threads of courage, kindness, and the choices made in the quiet moments between shadow and light." Jack knelt beside the pool, gazing into the depths as the water rippled and shimmered. Images began to form, visions of towering giants and sprawling beanstalks, of laughter echoing across golden fields, of a boy no larger than a thumb whose spirit blazed brighter than the tallest flame. The scenes shifted and swirled, stories unfolding like petals in the moonlight, weaving together the threads of adventure, friendship, and the timeless dance of hope and challenge. As the vision faded, Lyra's voice lingered softly in the night air. "Carry these truths with you, Jack. The path ahead will test you, but your heart will light the way. Remember, even the smallest flame can cast away the darkest night." With the stars as his silent witnesses and the forest alive with ancient magic, Jack rose, feeling the weight of destiny settle gently on his shoulders. Bramble padded close, and the sprite's laughter rose like a silver bell, clear and bright in the stillness of the night. Together, they moved forward, stepping beyond the pool's shimmering edge into the unfolding story of courage, wonder, and the enduring power of a heart that dares to dream. The forest around Jack seemed to hold its breath as he left the shimmering pool behind, the weight of Lyra's words settling deep within his soul like a whispered promise. The path before him twisted and stretched like a ribbon of shadows and light, winding between ancient trees whose trunks were thick with moss and whose branches arched overhead to form a living cathedral. The air was cool and scented with pine and wildflowers, but beneath the calm surface stirred a restless magic that prickled at Jack's skin and quickened his heartbeat. Bramble trotted steadily at his side, his fur gleaming faintly in the moonlight, while the sprite flitted ahead, her laughter a gentle chime carried on the night breeze. The silence was broken only by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of an owl, whose haunting hoot echoed through the trees like a sentinel's warning. Suddenly, the forest opened into a vast glade bathed in silver moonlight, where ancient stones rose like sentinels from the earth, carved with runes that pulsed softly with a faint blue glow. The air thrummed with the hum of old magic, thick and tangible, as if the very ground beneath Jack's feet held the memory of forgotten spells and lost kingdoms. The sprite's voice dropped to a whisper. "This is the Circle of Ancients, a place where the veil between worlds is thin, and the past and present entwine. Here, those who seek wisdom must face their own reflections and confront the truths hidden deep within their hearts." Jack stepped cautiously among the stones, feeling a mixture of reverence and apprehension. The golden hen in his satchel stirred softly, its feathers catching the pale light, and the harp, resting against his side, hummed faintly as if sensing the gravity of the moment. As he moved to the center of the circle, the runes blazed brighter, and the air shimmered with a sudden surge of energy. Before him appeared a shimmering mirror, not made of glass but woven from light and shadow, its surface rippling like a quiet pond disturbed by a gentle breeze. Jack stared into the mirror, and at first, all he saw was his own reflection, small, determined, and wide-eyed. But slowly, the image shifted, revealing scenes from his journey. The towering beanstalk stretching into the clouds, the giant's thunderous footsteps echoing like distant thunder, the forest's deep magic swirling in every leaf and stone. Then the mirror showed not just his past, but possible futures, paths winding through light and darkness, choices that could lead to triumph or despair, friendships forged and lost, courage kindled or extinguished. The weight of the vision pressed upon him, a flood of emotions swirling like a tempest within his chest. The sprite's voice, gentle but firm, broke through the whirlwind. To move forward, you must embrace all parts of yourself, the fearless boy, the hopeful dreamer, and even the doubts that whisper in the quiet moments. Only by accepting the whole can you truly harness the magic you carry. Jack took a deep breath, the cool air filling his lungs like a cleansing tide. He reached out and touched the mirror's surface, and the ripples stilled, the images settling into a calm, steady glow. A newfound clarity settled over him, a quiet strength that glowed from within like a steady flame against the night. The golden hen stirred once more, its feathers shimmering brighter, and the harp strings began to vibrate softly, releasing a melody that wove through the circle of ancients like a thread of silver light. With a steady heart and eyes shining with resolve, Jack stepped away from the mirror, ready to face whatever the winding path beyond held. The forest seemed to breathe around him, alive with promise and mystery, as he, Bramble, and the sprite moved onward, three travelers bound by courage, magic, and the unyielding hope of a boy who dared to climb beyond the clouds. The shadows of the ancient forest thickened as Jack pressed forward, his footsteps light but purposeful upon the soft carpet of moss and fallen leaves. Bramble's keen eyes scanned the undergrowth, ears twitching at every subtle sound, a snap of twig, a whisper of wind, the distant call of night birds weaving through the cool air. The sprite darted ahead, her laughter like the tinkling of silver bells, weaving between shafts of moonlight that filtered through the towering canopy. Jack felt the pulse of the forest thrumming around him, alive with secrets and stories woven through every root and stone. As they reached a clearing, the moon hung low, casting an ethereal glow upon a massive beanstalk spiraling upward, its thick vines coiling high into the clouds above like the very pillars of the sky. The beanstalk's emerald leaves shimmered with dew, each one sparkling like a tiny star kissed by dawn's first light. Jack's fingers brushed the rough bark, feeling the vibration of magic coursing through its veins, steady and strong, an ancient power that bridged earth and heaven. The air was thick with the scent of rich earth and sweet sap, mingling with the crisp night breeze that whispered promises of adventure. From somewhere above came a deep, rumbling growl that echoed like distant thunder, and a shadow flickered at the edges of the clearing, the giant, whose footsteps shaped the very landscape with their weight. The ground beneath Jack's feet seemed to hum, alive with the echoes of countless stories and daring feats. His heart beat steady but fast, the thrill of challenge and wonder mingling inside him as the adventure he had dreamed of loomed larger than ever. Bramble growled low, a fierce guardian ready to protect, while the sprite's eyes sparkled with excitement and mischief. Jack took a deep breath and began to climb, each step a mixture of determination and awe as the forest faded beneath him and the world above unfolded in endless sky and possibility. The beanstalk swayed gently, leaves brushing against Jack like the softest silk, while distant clouds drifted lazily, their edges glowing with the promise of sunrise. Higher and higher he climbed, the sounds of the forest replaced by the rush of wind and the faint calls of unseen creatures soaring beyond the clouds. The giant's footsteps echoed louder now, and a rumble of laughter rolled through the air like thunder, deep and powerful and full of ancient strength. Jack's fingers tightened around the vine, his eyes shining with the light of countless dreams and the unyielding spark of courage that had carried him this far. The path ahead was vast and unknown, wrapped in the mystery of giants and magic, of treasures waiting to be found and dangers yet to be faced, a journey stretching beyond the limits of the earth and into the very heart of legend itself. And so, beneath the endless canopy of twinkling stars that stretched across the velvet night, Jack stood at the threshold of a world both ancient and new, where every breath carried the scent of magic and every heartbeat echoed with possibility. The towering beanstalk behind him swayed gently in the breeze, a living bridge between the humble earth he called home and the mysterious realms that whispered promises of wonder and challenge beyond the clouds. In that moment, Jack felt the weight of his journey settle softly on his shoulders, not as a burden, but as a mantle of hope and courage forged through trials and triumphs, laughter and lessons learned. His spirit, though once small as a seed, had grown vast and strong, nourished by kindness, cleverness, and the unyielding belief that even the tiniest among us can change the course of the world. Around him, the forest hummed quietly, its ancient magic now intertwined with the melody of his own heart, while Bramble's loyal presence and the sprite's shimmering light reminded him that no path is ever walked alone. Jack took a deep breath, the cool night air filling his lungs and fueling the fire within, ready to climb higher still into the unknown, to face whatever wonders and perils awaited with steady hands and an open heart. His story, like the beanstalk itself, reached ever upward, an enduring testament to the power of hope, the strength found in courage, and the endless adventure that unfolds when one dares to dream beyond the limits of the world they know.